An outlaw with an arrow in his back. Then at dawn, $5,000 bounty hunters came to her door. The planet of Redspire was a place where the sky burned orange in the evening, and the horizon stretched wide, broken only by jagged mesas and scattered settlements. Dust swirled endlessly in the dry wind, and the people who lived here were tough, not because they wanted to be, but because the planet demanded it. Life here was slow, sometimes lonely, and never predictable. Lyra Solon wiped her hands on a grease-stained cloth as she stepped back from the half-finished repair on a small hover cart. Sparks had flown, oil had spilled, and still she smiled. There was something about fixing machines that made the world make sense. Everything could be solved with the right combination of tools, patience, and a little ingenuity. A sudden sound stopped her, a soft but deliberate crunching in the dust. Lyra's brow furrowed. No one usually walked along the canyon path at this hour. The sun had just dipped behind the jagged cliffs, and most people were already indoors. She stepped outside, wiping her hands again, and scanned the horizon. There, emerging from the red haze, was a figure. He moved slowly, almost painfully, hunched over. Something glimmered on his back, like an arrow but faintly glowing, pulsing with a soft blue light. Lyra's heart skipped. She had never seen anything like it. Plasma arrows were relics of the old galaxy wars. Rare, dangerous, and usually only seen in museums or old stories. To see one lodged in a person was unimaginable. The stranger collapsed just short of her workshop door. Dust billowed around him as he hit the ground with a quiet thud. Lyra ran to him, hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the thrill of curiosity and the rush of responsibility. You're hurt," she said. Her voice was steady, though her stomach was tight. "Come on, I'll help you," the man groaned, his hand clutching the glowing arrow. "Don't touch it," he rasped. "It's not just a wound. It's a beacon." Lyra frowned. "A beacon? What do you mean?" The stranger tried to speak more, but his strength failed him. His head fell back and his eyes closed for a moment. Lyra knew she had to act fast. She grabbed her medkit, one she usually used for minor scrapes and machinery burns, and gently lifted him into the workshop. Once inside, she laid him down on the repair table, careful not to jostle the arrow. The glow illuminated the room in a soft blue haze, casting strange shadows across the walls and tools. "Who are you?" she asked again, more insistently this time. He coughed, a low, dry sound. "Name's Cale Varn," he whispered. "And you? You don't know what's coming." Lyra's eyes widened. "Coming? What's coming?" Cale's hand twitched toward a small pouch tied around his waist. Inside were tiny metal chips, faintly humming. "The hunters," he said. "Bounty hunters. 5,000 credits. They're after me, and the artifact I carry." "Artifact?" Lyra repeated, her curiosity sharpening. She had repaired many machines, but the idea of a galaxy-wide artifact on her doorstep was something else entirely. Cale's breathing became uneven. Lyra adjusted the table so he could lie more comfortably. She checked the arrow's attachment. It wasn't ordinary. The plasma seemed almost alive, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "They're not like the usual hunters," Cale said, struggling to speak. "They have scanners, drones, and they'll stop at nothing to get it." Lyra's mind raced. She didn't like trouble, but she also couldn't ignore someone in need, especially someone with something so mysterious attached to them. Her instincts kicked in. "You're safe here for now," she said, more firmly than she felt. "I'll figure something out." Cale's eyes opened briefly, flickering with both pain and relief. You shouldn't have. It's dangerous for you."
Lyra shook her head.
"I can handle myself. Just stay still." For the next few hours, Lyra worked quietly, cleaning the wound, adjusting straps, and carefully monitoring the glow of the arrow. Cale remained mostly unconscious, murmuring things she couldn't quite understand. Outside, the wind howled, carrying dust and the smell of scorched metal from the distant refineries. By the time night fell fully, the sky was a deep violet, and the stars were sharp, shining like tiny beacons of hope. Lyra paused and leaned against the wall, looking at the stranger she had taken in. Who was he really? And what could this artifact be, that bounty hunters from across the galaxy would risk so much for it? She didn't have long to wonder. A low humming sound came from outside, a sound she recognized all too well. The distant whir of hover caravans and scanning drones approached the town. Lyra stiffened. Cale stirred, sensing her tension. They'll be here at dawn," he muttered. Lyra swallowed. Dawn wasn't far off, and already the small town she had always thought of as safe was about to become the center of something far bigger than anyone had imagined. "We'll figure something out," she said softly, though her mind raced through possibilities. She thought of her inventions, the old traps she sometimes built for fun, and the clever tricks that had kept her safe in the past. Maybe, just maybe, they could use them to outsmart these hunters. Cale coughed again, then whispered something else barely audible. "The arrow. It's more than it seems." "Don't let them take it." Lyra nodded, her resolve hardening. She didn't know what the arrow was yet, or why it was important. But she knew one thing. She couldn't let anyone, even the galaxy's deadliest bounty hunters, take it from him while he was under her roof. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying a strange metallic scent. Lyra peeked through the workshop window. The settlement was quiet, sleepy, and peaceful, completely unaware that the first whispers of chaos were heading their way. Cale's hand twitched and he opened his eyes again, locking them on hers. "You'll see, at dawn," he said. "Everything will change then." Lyra didn't flinch. She grabbed her toolkit and a small bag of gadgets she had been tinkering with for years. Whatever was coming, she would be ready. She would protect this man, this mysterious artifact, and perhaps even the town itself. For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt the thrill of real adventure, the kind of adventure that could change everything. And somewhere deep in the desert of Red Spire, the wind carried a faint humming glow, the first warning that the $5,000 bounty hunters were on their way and that nothing would ever be the same again. The night stretched long, the stars blinking like silent witnesses, and inside the workshop, Lyra worked quietly, preparing for the dawn that promised mystery, danger, and a story that was only just beginning. The first light of dawn spilled over the jagged mesas of Red Spire, painting the desert in pale gold and pink. Lyra Solon stood at her workshop window, her hands trembling slightly as she watched the horizon. Somewhere out there, bounty hunters were moving closer, drawn by the glowing arrow in Cale Varn's back. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with determination. Cale lay on the table, his eyes half open. The faint blue glow of the arrow pulsed with every heartbeat, casting strange shadows on the walls. He looked weaker than yesterday, but his mind was sharp. "You have to understand," he whispered, voice barely audible. "They are not ordinary hunters. These people, they think faster than most."
"They track everything."
Lyra nodded. "I get it. But I have some tricks, too. We'll make sure they don't find you." Cale's lips curved into a small, tired smile. "I hope so." "The artifact, it's not just valuable. It's important, more than anyone in this town knows." Lyra frowned. "Artifact? Can you tell me what it is?" Cale shook his head. "Not yet. First, we need to stay alive long enough to get there. And trust me, they won't wait." The sound of whirring engines and soft hums from outside confirmed his warning. Through the dusty haze, Lyra could just make out hover caravans gliding slowly over the mesa trails, scanning the desert. Their sensors flickered in the morning light like insect eyes. They were close, closer than she had imagined. Lyra turned back to Cale. "We need a plan. You can't move much, and I can't fight them head-on," she thought quickly. "But I can make decoys. I can make it look like you're moving in one direction while we slip away in another." Cale's eyes lit up. "Good. That might just work. You've got the skills for this." Lyra smiled faintly. She always loved tinkering with machines, but she had never imagined her inventions would be used to outsmart bounty hunters. Still, she had her tools, her gadgets, and her ingenuity. That had to be enough. Over the next few hours, she worked quietly, building small, hovering drones from old parts, wires, and sensors. Each one was equipped with a tiny light and a sound emitter, enough to mimic Cale's movements if placed on the canyon paths. She also rigged mirrors and reflective panels to bounce sunlight across the desert in a way that could confuse scanners. Every device had a purpose, every tool a role in their plan. "You're amazing," he whispered. "I never thought anyone could do this." Most people would just run and hide. "I don't run," Lyra said simply, her hands working quickly to attach the last drone. "Not when there's a puzzle to solve." As they prepared, Cale finally shared more details. The artifact he carried wasn't just a relic. It was a small crystalline device that could store and transfer energy in ways no one in the galaxy understood. Long ago, a lost civilization had created it, and it had been hidden on Red Spire for centuries. The bounty hunters weren't after Cale for money alone. They wanted the artifact for themselves. Lyra nodded slowly. "So, if they get it, it could be very dangerous?" Cale's expression darkened. or very powerful, and I don't trust them to use it responsibly. The desert grew hotter as the sun climbed higher. Dust swirled around the edges of the settlement, carrying the distant hum of scanners and engines. Lyra and Kale moved carefully, hiding the workshop and themselves as best they could. The small drones buzzed faintly around the canyon trails, almost invisible against the reddish rock. Hours passed. The bounty hunters advanced. Their presence felt rather than seen. Lyra's heart pounded, but she didn't stop working. She had mirrors to shift light, decoys to mislead sensors, and hidden paths through the canyons that only she knew. Every move was calculated, precise. Every decision could mean the difference between being found and surviving. By mid-afternoon, Kale's strength had returned just enough for him to sit up and examine the drones. "Clever," he said. "This might actually work. If we time it right." His voice trailed off as he glanced toward the horizon. "They're closer," Lyra said quietly, reading the faint glint of sunlight off metal in the distance. "We need to be ready." "They won't give up until they find you, or the artifact." Kale nodded. "I'll distract them when the time comes. You lead the way." Lyra frowned. Lead the way where? Kale pointed to a hidden canyon path he had discovered on his previous travels. "Through here. There's a small observatory at the top of the mesa. No one goes there. If we can get there, we can hide, and the artifact will be safe. For now." Together they moved carefully, Kale leaning on makeshift supports and Lyra guiding him. The path was narrow and winding, lined with red rock cliffs that towered above them. The sun beat down, but they moved silently, using every shadow to their advantage. By late afternoon, the distant hum of the bounty hunters' engines grew louder. Lyra set up the final decoy, a small drone carrying a holographic projection of Kale's outline, glowing faintly like the plasma arrow. The drone would lead the bounty hunters on a wild chase while she and Kale slipped through the hidden canyon. When the moment came, it worked perfectly. The bounty hunter's scanners locked onto the drone, following its path while Lyra and Kale moved unseen. They reached the top of the mesa where the ancient observatory stood, abandoned but intact. Its domed roof and sturdy walls would hide them for the night. Inside, Kale examined the small crystalline device that glowed faintly in his hand. This is why they're after me," he said softly. "Not just for money, but for control." Lyra studied it carefully. "It looks alive," she said, running a finger near its smooth surface. The device pulsed softly, almost like it was breathing. "What does it do exactly?" Kale shook his head. "I don't fully know. But if it falls into the wrong hands, it could change everything. And if we're careful, we might figure out how to use it safely." Outside, the sun set behind the mesas, painting the sky in deep purples and reds. The desert was quiet now, save for the faint hum of the decoy drone leading the bounty hunters away. For the first time in hours, Lyra allowed herself a moment to breathe. Kale looked at her, gratitude in his eyes. "You saved me today. You didn't have to, but you did." "I did what I had to do," Lyra replied simply. "And besides, it's kind of exciting, isn't it? Out here in the desert with the whole galaxy watching and you with the glowing arrow on your back." Kale smiled faintly, though the pain still lingered. "Exciting, yes. Dangerous, definitely. But I think we can manage." Night fell fully, and the observatory's walls provided a quiet refuge. Lyra set up small lights and protective sensors to alert them if the bounty hunters got too close again. Kale rested, still clutching the artifact, while Lyra kept watch. She couldn't shake the feeling that something else was coming. Not the bounty hunters. They were already accounted for. But something bigger. The artifact pulsed softly, almost as if it were alive, and with each pulse Lyra felt a strange sense of anticipation. "Tomorrow," Kale said, breaking the silence, "we need to move further. They'll be back, and they'll come smarter next time. But for tonight," Lyra nodded. She didn't know what the next day would bring, but one thing was certain. The desert of Redspire had never been this alive, and her life had never been this full of danger, mystery, and possibility. And somewhere out in the distance, the hum of the bounty hunter's engines faded, leaving the night quiet, almost peaceful. But the glow of the plasma arrow reminded Lyra that peace was only temporary. Adventure, mystery, and challenges lay ahead. For now, they were safe. But the dawn would bring new choices, new tests, and the shadow of hunters returning, and Lyra knew that she and Kale would have to be clever, brave, and inventive to face what was coming. Because the artifact wasn't just valuable, it was the key to something far greater than either of them had imagined. The observatory was quiet, but Lyra Solon could feel the tension in the air. The walls, made of ancient stone and metal, seemed to hum faintly with the energy of the artifact Cale Varn carried. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, glowing faintly in the early pre-dawn light. The wind whispered through the jagged mesas, carrying dust, distant engine hums, and the sense that something bigger was about to happen. Cale sat on a bench near the center of the observatory, holding the crystalline artifact gently in his hands. Its glow pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, and with each pulse, Lyra felt an energy she couldn't fully understand. She had spent the last night planning, thinking, and watching the horizon. Now, with the first light of dawn creeping in, she knew the real challenge had begun. "They'll be here soon," Cale said quietly, "and they'll be smarter this time. They'll expect tricks, decoys, everything. We have to be ready for something they won't expect." Lyra nodded, adjusting one of the small sensors she had placed near the observatory's entrance. "I've set up mirrors, sensors, and drones. They'll think we're elsewhere. But if they're clever, they might still find us." Cale studied her. "Then we need more than tricks. We need a plan that can't fail, something that uses the observatory itself." Lyra's eyes lit up. "The observatory has ancient tech, old light reflectors, grav field panels, and energy conduits. I can use them to create illusions, maybe even confuse their scanners completely." Cale leaned forward, his interest piqued despite the arrow lodged in his back. "Show me." "We need every second to work in our favor." They moved through the observatory together, inspecting the strange devices scattered across the room. Lyra ran her fingers over the controls of a grav field generator, noting how the energy lines pulsed faintly, matching the rhythm of the artifact. She realized that, if timed correctly, she could reflect the artifact's energy through the panels to create mirages, making it appear as though Cale was in several places at once. "This might work," she said. "If we combine the drones, the mirrors, and these panels, we could trick their scanners entirely. They wouldn't know where the real Cale is." Cale's face softened into a small smile. "You're amazing at this. I never thought tech like this would be useful against hunters, but I guess the old ways are better than we give them credit for." They worked in silence for hours, coordinating the timing of the mirrors, drones, and energy pulses. Each movement had to be precise. If one step failed, the bounty hunters might discover them. Lyra's hands moved with practiced precision, adjusting mirrors to reflect sunlight and artifact glow at exact angles. Cale adjusted the drone's paths so they would simulate movement across the desert, drawing attention away from the observatory. Finally, everything was in place. Lyra stepped back, wiping dust from her hands. "It's ready. Now we wait." Cale nodded, clutching the artifact. "We wait, and hope it's enough." The desert outside remained quiet, but Lyra's instincts told her that the hunters were near. A faint shimmer appeared on the horizon, the reflection of scanners catching the drone's signals. The bounty hunters had arrived. Their hover caravans moved slowly, scanning for the glowing plasma arrow. They were closer than before, more calculated, more precise. "Here they come," Lyra whispered. She activated the final sequence of mirrors and panels. The artifact's glow bounced across the observatory, creating multiple light reflections. Outside, the desert shimmered with false images of Cale. The bounty hunter's scanners flickered and beeped. They moved toward the first light of reflected energy, unaware that the real Cale and Lyra were hidden inside the observatory. The drones buzzed quietly, moving across the canyon trails to draw attention away from the mesa's peak. Cale watched them through a small window, fascination in his eyes despite the pain. "It's working," he said. "They can't see the real us." Lyra smiled faintly. "Not yet. But we need to keep thinking. If they get clever, they'll try to figure out the real location of the artifact. We need a final move, something they won't expect." Cale placed the artifact on a small pedestal in the center of the room. Its glow pulsed brighter as he adjusted it slightly. "The artifact itself can help," he said. "If we use its energy to create a signal, it could redirect their scanners entirely." Lyra studied it carefully. "Are you sure it's safe?" Cale nodded slowly. "I've carried it for a long time. I've learned its patterns. We can use it, but we must be precise. One wrong move, and the energy could reveal us instead of hiding us." Together, they synchronized the artifact's pulses with the observatory's mirrors and grav field panels. Light bounced in multiple directions, drones moved across the canyon, and reflections created dozens of illusory images of Cale. Outside, the bounty hunters scanned the desert, confused by what appeared to be multiple targets. Hours seemed to pass in silence, broken only by faint beeps from the drones and the soft hum of the observatory's energy. Lyra felt a strange excitement and fear. She had never faced danger like this before. Not physical violence, but a challenge of brains and creativity. And she realized that every step depended on trust. Trust in Cale, trust in her skills, and trust in the artifact itself. Suddenly, Cale's face changed. He looked at Lyra seriously. I need to tell you something, he said. The artifact, it's not just a tool. It has the ability to amplify energy, enough to change the environment around it. If we're not careful, it could either protect us completely or expose us. Lyra nodded. We'll be careful. Cale hesitated, then said quietly, You might have to choose. If the hunters get too close, you may have to decide whether to use the artifact to hide us completely, even if it risks revealing its full power to the galaxy, or to let them get a little closer while keeping it secret.
Lyra's heart skipped.
A choice like that could determine not just their fate, but the artifact's future. She looked at him, then at the glowing device. Her hands trembled slightly as she realized the weight of the decision. Minutes later, a soft alarm from one of the sensors indicated movement outside. The bounty hunters had begun to climb the canyon, scanning carefully, trying to ignore the illusions. Lyra held her breath. She could feel the energy of the artifact pulsing faster, as if it sensed the hunter's presence too. Cale leaned close. Now, he whispered, we activate the final sequence. Lyra flipped a switch, and the observatory's mirrors, panels, and graph field devices synchronized perfectly with the artifact's glow. Light bounced everywhere, creating dozens of images of Cale moving through the desert. The drones joined the illusion, flying in patterns that made the hunters' scanners struggle to lock on. Outside, the bounty hunters stopped, confused by the multiple Kyles flickering across the landscape. Engines hummed as they recalibrated, but every adjustment led them further into false paths created by the drones and reflections. Inside, Lyra and Cale watched silently. The tension was unbearable, but neither spoke. Their eyes met, and in that moment they understood. They had outsmarted the hunters without a single act of violence. The desert was quiet again, but the dawn had not yet fully arrived. Cale finally exhaled. You did it, he said softly. We're safe, for now. Lyra smiled, feeling both relief and exhaustion. For now, she repeated. But we'll have to move soon. This place won't hide us forever. Cale nodded. I know. And we'll need to decide how to use the artifact. Its energy could help the planet, the town, even the galaxy, but only if we make the right choice. Outside, the first rays of full sunlight hit the desert. The bounty hunters, frustrated by the illusions, retreated for now, unable to find the real Cale or the artifact. Lyra knew they would return, smarter and more determined. But for the moment, the observatory was their sanctuary. Lyra turned to Cale. We made it through the first wave, but the real challenge, the real decision is coming. We'll have to choose what to do with the artifact, and it won't be easy. Cale looked at the glowing crystal, his expression thoughtful. I think we can do it. Together. Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had always loved puzzles, machines, and clever solutions. Now she realized that the greatest puzzle was not in mechanics, but in decisions, trust, and courage. And somewhere deep in the desert of Redspire, the artifact pulsed gently, as if acknowledging their success, and silently promising that the dawn of choices had just begun. The bounty hunters were out there waiting for the next move. And Lyra and Cale knew that when they returned, they would need every ounce of skill, creativity, and wisdom to survive, not by fighting, but by thinking, planning, and daring to make the right decision. Because the artifact was more than power. It was a challenge, and the desert of Redspire had never demanded more from anyone than it did from them at this moment. The sun rose slowly over the mesas of Redspire, spilling warm golden light across the desert. Lyra Solon and Cale Varn stood near the observatory's entrance, watching the horizon. The bounty hunters had not returned yet, but Lyra knew it was only a matter of time. Their clever tricks and illusions had delayed them, but they were patient, calculating, and relentless. Cale adjusted the plasma arrow in his back carefully, wincing slightly. The glow pulsed with every heartbeat, reminding him, and Lyra, of how fragile their advantage truly was. We can't stay here forever, Cale said quietly. They'll figure out the patterns eventually. We need a new plan, and soon. Lyra nodded. She had spent the night thinking, examining the artifact and testing the observatory's devices. I think I have an idea, she said. It's risky, but it might just work. We'll use the artifact itself to create a mirage over the town and the desert. They won't know what's real or fake, and while they're chasing illusions, we can slip away. Kale studied her. Are you sure it's safe? Lyra nodded. As safe as we can make it. I just need to synchronize the mirrors and panels with the artifact's pulses. It will amplify the glow and create multiple images of you moving across the desert. It will confuse their scanners completely. Kale smiled faintly, admiration in his eyes. You're amazing, Lyra. I never thought anyone could outsmart the bounty hunters like this. Together they worked quickly, adjusting mirrors, grav field panels, and drones. The artifact pulsed in rhythm with their movements, casting light across the observatory and desert. Each reflection was perfectly timed, bouncing and splitting into dozens of images of KL, all glowing with the same blue light as the plasma arrow. Outside, a low hum signaled the approach of the bounty hunters. Their hover caravans moved slowly, scanning the desert with sophisticated sensors. But when their scanners caught the first reflection of Kale, confusion set in. Multiple images flickered across the mesas, bouncing light and energy in impossible directions. The hunters' scanners beeped frantically, unable to determine which image was real. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the final sequence. Almost there now, she called softly. Kale activated a small pulse in the artifact. The glow intensified, radiating through the mirrors and panels to create a shimmering field over the town and canyon paths. To anyone watching from a distance, it looked like Kale was moving in dozens of directions at once, racing across mesas, canyon trails, and rooftops. The bounty hunters stopped, scanning desperately. Every adjustment seemed to make things worse. Their drones swerved and hovered, trying to lock onto a target, but each time they thought they had it, another illusion appeared. Kale and Lyra watched quietly from the observatory. Their plan was working. For the first time since he'd arrived on Red Spire, Kale allowed himself to relax a little. We've done it, he whispered. They can't find the real me or the artifact. Lyra smiled, though her mind was already racing ahead. Not for long. But we've bought enough time to make our next move. They waited until the bounty hunters were distracted completely, their scanners chasing impossible images across the desert. Then Kale leaned toward Lyra. It's time, he said. We leave. We have to get the artifact somewhere safe, where no one can find it. Somewhere only we know. Lyra nodded. She had packed a small bag with essentials and gadgets. Together they slipped through a hidden tunnel behind the observatory, descending into a canyon that few in Red Spire even knew existed. The desert stretched endlessly around them, but they were careful, moving quietly, guided by hidden paths and Lyra's knowledge of the terrain. Hours passed as they navigated the twisting canyons. The artifact glowed faintly in Kale's hands, lighting their path. At one point they paused near a natural rock arch to rest. The wind whispered around them, carrying the scent of dust and ozone from distant energy fields. Why did they want this artifact so badly? Lyra asked quietly. Kale looked at her. Power, he said simply. The artifact can amplify energy, control systems, even influence weather or environmental fields. In the wrong hands, it could be catastrophic. In the right hands, it could help civilizations rebuild, improve lives. But the wrong people don't care about that. They want control. Lyra shivered, realizing the full weight of their responsibility. Then we have to protect it, she said firmly, no matter what. Kale nodded.
Exactly.
And that's why I trust you, Lyra. You've been clever, brave, and cautious. You see things others don't. Together, we can keep it safe. They moved until the sun began to set behind the mesas, painting the canyon in shades of orange and purple. In the distance, the bounty hunters' sensors flickered, but they were chasing illusions, never catching up to the real Kale and Lyra. At last, they reached a hidden plateau far from the settlement, a place where ancient stone ruins provided natural protection. Kale placed the artifact in the center, surrounded by reflective crystals Lyra had found along the path. Together they arranged mirrors and panels to amplify the artifact's glow in a controlled way, creating a small energy field that would conceal it from scanners. It's safe here, Kale said, breathing a sigh of relief. No one will find it. Not today, not tomorrow. Lyra nodded, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. They had outsmarted the bounty hunters, protected the artifact, and survived a challenge that could have ended in disaster. Kyle looked at her, a faint smile on his face. I have to leave, he said quietly. The bounty hunters will return eventually. It's safer if I disappear for a while, but I'll come back when the time is right. Lyra felt a pang of sadness. They had faced so much together, and now he was going to vanish into the desert again. Will I see you again? She asked softly. Cale placed the plasma arrow's tip lightly against her hand. "You will, but until then, take care of Redspire. Protect the artifact. And trust yourself. You're stronger than you think." Without another word, Cale stepped into the canyon shadows and disappeared. The desert swallowed him, leaving only faint footprints in the dust. Lyra watched until the last shimmer of his presence vanished, then turned back to the artifact. She studied it carefully. Its glow pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. She realized that it wasn't just an object of power. It was a responsibility. It was a choice. And now she was its guardian. The night sky stretched above her, deep indigo and dotted with countless stars. The wind whispered softly, carrying the scent of desert blooms and distant energy fields. Lyra smiled, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The bounty hunters had been clever, but they had underestimated ingenuity, creativity, and courage. She set up small monitoring devices around the artifact, making sure it would remain hidden and protected. Then she stepped outside, looking over the plateau. Redspire lay peaceful below, unaware of the adventure that had unfolded above it. The mesas glowed faintly in the moonlight, and the desert hummed softly with life. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly connected to something bigger than herself. The artifact was safe, Cale was alive, and the desert, wild, dangerous, and beautiful, had become a place of adventure, discovery, and hope. And somewhere deep in the shadows, beyond the mesas and canyons, the bounty hunters regrouped. They would return, but they would never find the artifact without facing the cleverness and determination of Lyra Solon. The desert was vast, and the galaxy was wide, but for now, peace had returned to Redspire. Lyra knew that she and Cale had changed it, even in small ways. They had outsmarted those who sought power, protected a secret that could change the future, and discovered courage and skill they hadn't known they had. The wind whispered through the canyon one last time, carrying with it a promise of more adventures to come. Lyra stood tall, the artifact glowing softly in its protective field, and whispered to herself, "We've survived, and we'll keep surviving. Together, in our own way." The desert stretched endlessly before her, a world full of possibilities, mysteries, and stories yet to be written. And, somewhere out there, Cale Varn moved through the shadows, carrying his own story forward, one that would someday intersect with hers again. The bounty hunters were defeated, the artifact was protected, and Lyra Solon, the clever mechanic of the desert, had earned her place in the legend of the frontier. The mesas glowed in the moonlight, the artifact pulsed gently, and the desert whispered softly, carrying the promise that adventure never truly ends. And with that, the desert of Redspire returned to its quiet, mysterious beauty, a place where an outlaw with an arrow in his back and a clever mechanic could change the course of the galaxy without a single act of violence.